Howdy, boys and girls, and welcome back to week 2 of the 2017 college football season and week 2 of the 2017 Carla and Crappy show. Carla, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Is it really only week 2?
Only week 2. Just ridiculous amount of stupid good football last weekend, the first weekend, and more games than we knew what to do with this weekend.
Yeah.
Awesome start, right? Ow, my cat just bit me on the leg.
Hi, Charlie.
Hi, Charlie.
That's a great start to week 2, right? Yeah.
Yes.
No, so we were talking during pre-show here about how I did nothing all weekend other than, for the most part, sitting my rear end on the couch and watching football, and it was glorious.
Absolutely.
And it stormed here today. We're filming, or taping, I guess I have to say now, right? Because we're audio.
Ain't no film.
We're taping on Tuesday, and a cold front came through here today, and so it actually feels like football weather now. Like, it's in the low 70s for highs and the 50s at night, and like that's stuff we don't see here until October. So really excited about it being football season and feeling like football season.
It was. We were running around in Cleveland for a friend's birthday party over the weekend, and it definitely felt like fall up there. It was awesome. Since you sat on your butt and watched college football all day for the first Saturday, you are in a perfect position to answer the one question we have about week 1, which is what thing, team, player, game, unit impressed you the most of everything that you saw?
Wow, impressed me the most. That's a great question. I know who impressed me the least.
We could do that.
Who impressed me? I'll keep thinking about who impressed me the most. But who impressed me the least was Texas.
Okay.
And I'm not alone in that bandwagon. If there's going to be a fan base to go off the deep end in the world is ending after week 1, thank you, football gods, for making it Texas, because at least that's fun to watch.
Right.
Because they've been kind of on this teetering cliff, and Tom Herman was supposed to save everything, and my gosh, I mean, raise our glasses to the Terrapins, fear the turtle. I mean, that was they looked great in Austin on Saturday. Surprisingly, and we were texting during that game, and I said, gosh, I hope this means that the Big Ten East is going to be even more entertaining than even we thought, knowing that Michigan's going to be in the mix. Your Buckeyes are in the mix. My Knits are in the list.
I don't actually hope that, for the record. Just so we know.
4 teams. I mean, that could be fun. It could be fun. I mean,
it could be fun. Yes.
It's nice to have somebody else kind of stepping up, because we kind of lost Michigan State this year, I think. So Maryland, what the heck? Welcome to the party. Who impressed me the most? Why am I struggling with this question so much?
I'm going to go. You think? I'm going to go.
Okay.
And I will say about Texas, I think they're going to be fine. Knowing Tom Herman as I do, what he was able to do with Ohio State's offense in a very, very short period of time, especially what he was able to do when Braxton Miller, the apparent starter from before the 2014 season, when he gets hurt in camp, JT Barrett, who has taken like 3 snaps in college football at that point, comes in. Actually, no, Barrett had redshirted. He had taken exactly no snaps. They go through the 2014 season the way they did and end up winning the national titles. I'm well aware of what Tom Herman could do, and so loud Texas fans, you guys are going to be fine. The thing that impressed me most, and granted, I did not get to watch a ton on Saturday, but for a unit that lost 10, 11 starters through graduation and drafts and all the other things, man, Michigan's defense looked impressive.
Yeah.
That's a lot of speed, not many mistakes that you would expect from a unit that doesn't have quite the experience. Florida's. We've talked at length over the last couple of years about Florida's issues at quarterback, and I know they had some folks that were just looking at the game overall. They had some folks that were suspended and couldn't play, but that's still a top 25 SEC team, and Michigan basically held Florida's offense to pretty much nothing. On Saturday. So yeah, that was the impressive one for me of the stuff that I saw, without question.
Okay, I got mine.
All right.
Josh Rosen, USC. That game on Sunday night was a game that I had all but given up on, and I think most of America did as well. Flipped over to the other game, much more interested in what was happening in Maryland with that game, and then all of a sudden we're watching Twitter, and they're saying, "Wait, UCLA is slowly starting to mount a comeback here." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, sure, whatever. They're going to get a couple touchdowns back." But then when it got within one score, I was like, "Okay, this suddenly got really, really interesting." And Josh Rosen's final drive to go down there to tie the game and then, win the game. Your point, that was nothing short of remarkable. I know there's a stigma attached with Josh Rosen and the chosen Rosen and all that stuff, and whatever. Don't he has an ego, okay, but still, that was an impressive drive to go down there and to come back from 34 down in the third quarter. That's a game for the ages that almost kind of fell out under everybody's radar because we were also entertained by the Virginia Tech game that was happening. So yeah, Josh Rosen probably is stand out to me.
Okay, that's good. Good stuff all the way around. We want to start with what's going on with this weekend. Last weekend we talked about how many good matchups there were, especially for a week one. We're going to actually do a speed round for this week because we have 3 excellent games and then 3 more very, very good games that we easily could have talked about. But we're trying to not speak to you guys for an hour and a half every week, so we're going to kind of limit it a little bit. This weekend, I mean, two of the 3 top games that we're going to talk about are obvious. I mean, we have big ones for my team, big one for your team. And in fact, that's where we're going to start because they kick off the afternoon of the big games that we're going to talk about. Of course, I am speaking of Pitt at number 4 Penn State. This is a renewal of the series that renewed last year. Great game in Heinz Field, just down the road from where I live. This year, Penn State is favored by 21. I'm going to let the Penn State fans start with this one, Carla. What do you think?
Okay, so first of all, it's a rivalry game, right? So throw the line out the window because the same thing could have been said last year. It was a lot closer, and the outcome was different last year, I think, than a lot of people suspected. It's interesting because last year when this rivalry was renewed, it was I went off on a rant last year on this game because I was trying to say that both these teams needed to move ahead. Well, Penn State obviously moved ahead. Pitt moved ahead last year, so I think we're past that. I think this is actually a rivalry game now. And you could argue that the rivalry has gotten even more intense over the year, mostly because you could make a pretty solid argument that Pitt kept Penn State out of the football playoff last year. Now, I know Penn State had 2 losses, and that Michigan loss was the one that everybody remembered, and the differential there was just so big. I kept saying that all year. Nobody's going to forget the 44-10 or whatever that score was. And that's a valid argument. But if Penn State only had 1 loss, and that was the loss, I think there would have been a tougher argument between your Bucks and my Knits as to who actually got that spot. And, I think it was the 2 losses that kept Penn State out.
I think, that's a very valid thing to say.
So Penn State's playing with a chip on its shoulder because it feels like it missed out. They looked great on Saturday. Now, admittedly, Saquon Barkley had a bit of a slip up on one of his first drives. They were driving really nicely, and he threw a stupid pass. And weather conditions weren't great. Kind of looked like it slipped out of his hand a bit. It was a total lame duck ball. Threw a pick in the end zone. But that was really the only misfire for the offense in the entire day. They shut out Akron. Yes, I know it's Akron, but it's a MAC team. And the fact that they've got a defense that was able to shut out a MAC team, there's something to be said for putting up the goose egg. Throughout the entirety of the game, even when they started subbing people out in the second half. Trace McSorley, not a bad day at the office, 300-plus yards if you combine rushing and receiving. So the offense is firing. Defense looked great. Penn State, great win, week 1, exactly what everybody kind of expected. Pitt, yeah. I mean, that's probably the sound that you could probably hear from your place if you'd been home on Saturday to hear what was going on at Heinz Field. I mean,
deafening silence from the fourth quarter.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you blow a 21-0 lead against Division II Youngstown State. or FCS. Sorry, I still, gosh, how long has that been? I just called him D2.
On this show, it's always Star Lake. It's always going to be 1AA. I'm sorry, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. So they gave up the 21-point lead to Youngstown State. Go Penguins! And Max Brown, the transfer over from USC, he was kind of supposed to be the savior of this offense, and he didn't do a whole heck of a lot to instill some confidence. Especially when the leading receiver for the entire game was Pitt's running back. I mean, that doesn't give you a lot to instill some offense or instill some confidence in that deep game. I think this all shapes up to a very big Penn State win on Saturday, playing in Beaver Stadium with a Penn State team that's got a lot of confidence, and played really well in week 1 against a Pitt team that is now not talking to the media again for the second year in a row and kind of reeling after this Youngstown State and going on the road in that environment. The only thing that would make me feel even more confident about this game is if it was a night game and it was a whiteout.
Yeah.
The fact that it's 3:30, the atmosphere isn't quite as amped in Beaver State. It's still amped, but it's not as amped as a night game.
Right.
But Penn State wins this game. I'm a little nervous about them covering with the line being that high. Just because of the fact that it's a rivalry game and strange things happen during rivalries. But Penn State wins this game and gets revenge for last year.
Okay. You said at the outset that you wanted to throw out the lines because this is a rivalry game. I'm not going to throw out the line in this one because this has everything. Everything says to me that this is a Big Ten win. And I'm gonna kind of enjoy this a little bit because after last season, Pitt might have had the most annoying fan base of college football in 2016 because of this game, because of the Penn State game, and because that they beat Clemson. And I even got heard that indirectly because because of Ohio State's loss in the Fiesta Bowl. So it's like, okay. Last year, Pitt had good quarterback play in James Conner, very good running back. They don't have those things. The replacement quarterback, as you said, did not look great. And that's against a 1AA defense. Graded a good one. That's a good program in Youngstown State, but
right.
The level of competition just does not match up. And the other thing is, the print newspaper that I work for in Pittsburgh had a story today about Juwan Johnson, Penn State's wide receiver, saying that this game is just another game for Penn State. And that's crap. I don't believe him. I don't believe him at all. I think this is something. I think the folks at Penn State are looking at this game like I am looking at the Penn State game. For my Buckeyes, and we'll get to that in October. Pitt is also missing key players for disciplinary reasons. It's just everything stacks up for this to be. Will Penn State win this by 3 touchdowns? I think that's a real possibility. One way, whether the specifics can score are. I think this is going to be a beating for the Nittany Lions. I need to see if I can show you this because he brought it up here. I swear to God, I did not do this. We were about to talk at number 5 Oklahoma at number 2 Ohio State. Ohio State is favored by a touchdown. You've noticed me like reaching down and laughing at stuff while you're trying to talk. It's this. My cat brought this upstairs, and he's been throwing it at my legs. That's why he was biting me, because he wants me to throw this thing for him.
Would you explain what that is for our audio listeners?
This is thank you. I forget we have it, audio listeners. I'm holding it's a beanie ball, I think is what they're called. It's a little Ohio State football player guy, and my cat loves this thing. He carries it around in his mouth and wants us to throw it and roll it around so he can chase. And while we were in Cleveland last weekend, he found it from wherever he had hidden it in the basement. So because it was out when we got back from our trip. So it's just been around. And while we were talking about the Penn State game, he is smacking this up against my leg, and I'm like, okay, this will be a nice lead into talking about this game, Carla. I think I said Ohio State's favored by 7, 7.5. What do you think about this one?
Well, I didn't see as much of the Ohio State game on Thursday night as I would have liked because of other commitments that I have on Thursday night. But I did catch the second half, which, if you're an Ohio State fan, means that I saw the best part of the game.
You saw the good one. You saw the good one.
Yeah. So I was a little. I mean, I was a little bit surprised by the first half of that game. It really kind of took your Bucks a little while to get going on offense. At least it was kind of the feel that I got jumping into that game late. But once they got going, they were fine. It just took them until the second half to really kind of gel. And it's the first game of the season, and on the road, okay. I'm not going to take too much weight in that. The bigger concern for me is when I went back and looked at the stats was the 437 yards they gave up on defense to an Indiana team that doesn't have Kevin Wilson anymore. We talked about that last week, that Kevin Wilson's on your sideline now. And this was an offense that, everyone was kind of like, well, but they don't have their main guy on the sideline to make these calls. And they seem to be just fine. And that 437 is a little eye-opening, I think. Again, it's week one on the road. Okay. But still, that surprised me a bit. Oklahoma, and I'll let you handle more of the Ohio State breakdown here. I figured you'd have plenty to say, so I'm kind of staying out of this one.
Might have a thing or two.
Oklahoma blew out UTEP. That's what you're supposed to do. But I think what was, really interesting in this game is that, Lincoln Riley, first game as head coach after Bob Stoops retired, he made it really, really clear in that game that this team is going to live and die by Baker Mayfield. This was a team that last year had that barrage of running backs, right? Samaje Perine, and they've all gone to the NFL now. And there really wasn't a run game per se. Now I say that, but there were three backs that each had about 50 yards. I mean, it couldn't get any more even than this. Their yardage was 53, 52, and 51. Okay, so they wanted everybody to get 50 yards, and they pulled them out of the game. But it's interesting that there wasn't really a dominant back in the game, only about 150 yards. And Baker Mayfield went 329 and three TDs and was 19 of 20. He only missed on one ball the entire game before they pulled him out. So I actually think that that's a sign of hope for an Ohio State win here. Not that I'm saying that Ohio State needs hope, but I think Oklahoma has made itself so one-dimensional, at least that's the way it looks after week one, that if you shut down that minimalist run game that they've got going and can play defense in the secondary, I think this is the way the offense is set up. This is something that Ohio State can handle. And I don't think it's going to be quite as potent of an offensive attack as long as, you stop the run early and secondary plays well to kind of beat the deep ball with Mayfield. But I like Ohio State at home in the horseshoe. I think this game, I thought this game was going to be a lot closer until I started looking at it, and I realized that, if without that run game, I think your Buckeyes will have a field day on defense.
It helps. The Indiana's gaudy numbers. I mean, they have a good passing attack, and the departure of Kevin Wilson doesn't change the personnel. So what you saw very quickly is the inexperience that Ohio State has in the defensive backfield. One cornerback has a significant amount of experience as a nickel corner last year, but the rest of the guys back there, they got special teams playing time. But this is a new deal for them. And I think one of the adjustments that Ohio State made in the second half, besides deciding to score, was running more zone packages. Typically you would see Ohio State play man-to-man in the defensive backfield, run different blitz packages, pressure the quarterback. Ohio State did not have to worry about the run last week, and I think the same thing could happen this time around. It's exactly what you said. Without and particularly, if you go into this game knowing that our opponent doesn't have the running attack that we really need to be concerned about, you can see more nickel and dime packages. And boy, if Ohio State can pressure Baker Mayfield with just the front four, it's lights out. It is lights out. And on the offensive side of the ball, deciding score was a good thing. That was something, and it took a half for the coaching staff to figure out how that was going to work. But you did see. I mean, last week I talked about stretching the field, making sure that you have the speed on the outside and downfield to loosen up the run game, and that did happen in the second half with the long passes to Johnny Dixon and Paris Campbell. That was the thing that was missing from the offense a year ago. It's not that stuff was sporadic against Indiana, and it will need to be more consistent as we go through this season, and certainly more consistent this weekend. And then there's the nice surprise, J.K. Dobbins, true freshman tailback, getting a start because Mike Weber, who was a starter through most of last year, was a little gimpy, and they held him out of the game. And J.K. Dobbins rushed for 181 yards, which is the Ohio State record for a true freshman in his first game. And he has well over 200 yards in total offense. That's a nice addition, and that's some depth at tailback that I wasn't aware that Ohio State had. I don't see the kind of beating that Ohio State was able to put on Oklahoma in Norman last year. But I think 7 might be a little conservative. I think this will be a comfortable win for the Buckeyes. We debated about this third game, and there are a number of ones that could be as interesting. But this has been a rivalry that has meant a lot to the Pac-12 recently. I'm talking about number 14 Stanford, at number 6 USC, and I think USC is favored by 7 points on Saturday night. What do you think about this one?
This one's really, really interesting, especially kind of when you look at both teams as the way that they're entering coming into this. I think USC was a little bit of a surprise this week to a lot of people in the way that Western Michigan gave them fits. Western Michigan, a team that has lost PJ Fleck, is now the head coach at Minnesota, and a team that everyone was kind of like, do they have an identity? But probably the same thing we were talking about with Indiana about, you lose Kevin Wilson, but the players are still there. Same thing happened here. They lost PJ Fleck, but they still have the personnel. And Western Michigan, I actually posted this on Facebook on Saturday that, I had my eye on that game was, are we going to see a week 1 Maction call already?
Yes.
I mean, they kept that game super close until the fourth quarter, which was quite surprising. And USC actually needed 2 late touchdowns in the fourth quarter to kind of finally put that away. And then, of course, the extra point seen around the world, which was an incredible moment with the center coming out to do the snap on the extra point there in the fourth quarter, which was, just one of like 16 really amazing moments that happened this weekend. It was a great weekend for football. Sam Darnold had a good night, 289. Ronald Jones had a $159, 3 touchdowns. But it's interesting, the way that the Associated Press described this team was really, really interesting. In their game story, they actually used the word, the defense struggled. And that was, and for the AP to use the word struggle, okay, I mean, knowing the AP the way that you and I do, that's a pretty strong word coming from the AP.
Yeah.
And it was my concern with the Trojans heading into this season, having watched them in the Rose Bowl against my Knits. That was an offensive display gone wild on both sides of the ball. Neither team really did a great job of stopping, either team's offense. And I didn't see anything that made it any different to think that USC was going, USC needed to really kind of step up on defense, didn't really do that, and they obviously didn't do that in week 1. Meanwhile, Stanford, which played a long, long time ago in a land far, far away, which is quite true because they played back on August 26th.
2 weeks ago, yeah.
Which is back in that fictional week 0 or whatever that is now, in the soft launch of college football in Sydney, Australia, of all places. So they've had a long break here since their first game because it really does feel like their first game was a season ago. And they did what they were supposed to do in Sydney. They beat up on a Rice team that was overmatched for that game. But what that means is that they've gotten a lot of prep time now to work on this USC game, which I think is going to play a very heavy role in this game because they're working to replace Christian McCaffrey. They've done that in Bryce Love. He rushed for 180. That's a pretty good, debut. And the interesting thing is that they have a redshirt freshman now by the name of Cameron Scarlett, who actually scored 3 of the touchdowns. Bryce Love, who's kind of the lead back in that new package that they put together, never scored in that game, which was ridiculous because the game was like 52-3 or something like that. But he never scored. It was Scarlett that scored all the touchdowns. So they've got this really nice kind of 1-2 combo power punch they've got going there. And Keller Christ looked great. He's coming back from a pretty bad ACL injury in the bowl game. And this is shaping up to be really, really interesting. Can USC fix its defense and kind of put its offense back together in time for a Stanford team that can kind of, it's sensing that we've got an opportunity here to go on the road to the Coliseum and really make a statement here in the national picture. I honestly don't know who to pick in this game. I really don't, because I like Kevin Shaw with the extra time.
Uh-huh.
I think Stanford might win this thing. I didn't see a lot from USC on Saturday or Sunday, whatever night. Saturday. No, that game was Saturday. Yes,
I think it was Saturday.
There's so many games this weekend. I don't remember. I didn't see a lot from USC that really kind of made me say, yes, they're gonna do this. Go Tree. I think.
Go Tree. I came across an interesting thing as I was trying to figure out this game. In the last 10 years, starting in 2007, the team that's gained more rushing yards in the series has won 8 of 10 games, and I think that means it's not a coincidence that Stanford has won. I think it was 7 of those 10 games in the last decade. That's because this is what Stanford does.
Right.
Stanford, and we've talked about this ad nauseum in past seasons. Stanford, in a lot of ways, looks like an old school Big Ten team. They have gigantic defensive and offensive lines. They try to dominate there. They want to run the football. They don't need a spectacular quarterback. They need a solid one who can, make a throw here and there and help manage the game. Now, and I will absolutely stipulate that in that stretch, in that decade, SC was down for a bunch of that time because of NCAA sanctions, and it takes a while to recover, and certainly that's put them in a tough spot in the last decade. But even if you look at Southern Cal, and they're getting a lot of respect from the pollsters, sitting here at number 6. I'm not sure that they're back all the way, and even if they are, I don't even know that's the question. I think Stanford sets up really, really well again to win this game. If Southern Cal doesn't have an elite defense, and boy, if you look at what they did against a MAC team a week ago, you have to wonder. It is a nightmare for them to have to play a game against a team like Stanford that runs the ball really well. Love looked like he did not look like Christian McCaffrey, but he's absolutely a great running back. That's a great start for him. Ball control, solid defense. The defense doesn't have to win the game, but it just has to slow down the SC a little bit. And that if you slow down the pace, everything plays into Stanford's game plan. And I think they're going to win this in LA. And I think I have no predictions about the score, but that feels like they have this formula against Southern Cal, and that's Stanford's going to be Stanford, and that's how this game's going to go.
I have a prediction.
Okay.
Stanford's head coach's name is David Shaw, not Kevin Shaw.
David Shaw.
David Shaw.
Sorry about that, David.
I'm going to blame the seltzer.
I'm gonna blame the Imperial Stout that I'm drinking.
I didn't say this was just regular seltzer. It's all good.
Okay, good. Fair enough. We're going to wrap up with the speed round because there were so many games that were so awesome this weekend that we couldn't pick just 3. So we have 3 more, starting with number 13, Auburn at number 3, Clemson. Clemson is favored by 5. Carla, what do you think?
2 teams beat up on cupcakes in week 1.
Yes.
I mean, they did exactly what they were supposed to do. And Clemson in this game, and I hate to say this, but based on the injury that happened to DeAndre Francois, which was awful in for Florida State, you have to believe that Clemson is circling the wagons right now, realizing they have an opportunity here, and it's for a bad reason. But you've got to, that's where their mentality has to be. And they got a great debut from Kelly Bryant under center to take over for Deshaun Watson. He looked great. Auburn got a good start from its sophomore quarterback, Jarrett Stidham. He shook some early mistakes to kind of lead the team. So these are two teams that really, Auburn can't really doesn't want to fall that far behind because it's the SEC West. So it doesn't want to have a non-conference loss like this if it wants to have any chance to kind of keep up with Alabama. Clemson sends his blood in the water, so to speak, in the ACC. I like Clemson at home in this game because I think they've got the experience, and there's enough experience from that national championship team on that roster to live up to that hype. But yeah, I think I like Clemson at home.
Clemson band sucks. I will say that, but sensing the opening that they have in the ACC, Clemson wins this at home. Next up, number 15, Georgia at number 24, Notre Dame. I didn't realize this, and I read this today. Georgia hasn't played a football game north of the Mason-Dixon line since the early 1900s. And that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but it has been a really long time. Notre Dame is favored by 4.5 points. What do you think?
Same thing like Clemson. Georgia has to sense some opportunity after seeing the lackluster performances from Tennessee and Florida on Saturday. So they've got to come in motivated. They lost Jacob Eason on their quarterback in the first quarter, but hey, Jake Fromm, true freshman, looked the part of an SEC quarterback. They did just fine on Saturday against Appy State. And they still have two running backs that feel like they've been there forever, and Nick Chubb and Sony Michel. I mean, 15-year starters, I think, is Georgia at this point. And so Notre Dame, welcome back to the top 25. It's been a while since they've been up there, so it's nice to see them back in the national player. But it's weird. Does it feel to you like Notre Dame is flying under the radar this year?
Maybe a little.
A little bit. Like nobody's talking about Notre Dame, and not that I'm complaining about that, but it's just nobody's talking about them right now. They've got a running back in Josh Adams, 161 on 19, 2 touchdowns. It's in South Bend, which means it'll be, I hate to say this, I'm going to pick Notre Dame in this game simply because they've got a freshman quarterback, first time under the lights in South Bend, really tough environment. And I think Notre Dame's defense is going to be able to kind of hone that in, but I expect a really, really good game. This game, the game we just talked about, your game and those 3 games are all at the same time.
Yep.
So that's the 7:30 Eastern time slot. So get your trigger thumbs ready. It's gonna be a great night of college football.
I'm gonna be in Ohio Stadium. I don't have a trigger thumb, but they'll show us scores, I'm sure. This is the kind of game that makes Notre Dame the single most annoying program in college football. They should not be able to hang with Georgia. They should not. But because this game, especially because this game is in South Bend, Notre Dame will win on Saturday, and just because it's Notre Dame and they're playing at home, and God loves them or something. I don't know what it is, but they will win this game. The final game of the speed round. Yes, and that'll be fun. We get to talk about that more later on. We have unranked Boise State at number 20, Washington State. Washington State is favored. The Cougs are favored by 10.5 points. What do you think?
Surprising line. First kind of real Pac-12 after dark, you could almost call it, is after the late games. And it's on the Pac-12 network, so it really does qualify as Pac-12 after dark. This is not the Boise that we're used to. They never really comfortably pulled away against Troy last week, so offensively they're still trying to figure things out. Wazoo had a good week against Montana State. That's, cupcake. And defense didn't give up very many yards. They gave it less than 150 yards to Montana State. That's a good sign. Game is in Pullman. I never count out a Chris Peterson team.
Right.
Just because of the way that his offensive mind works, but at the same time, I don't think this is the same quality of a Boise offense that we're used to in the past. I think Mike Leach goes crazy and Wazoo wins it.
If we were on the blue turf, maybe.
Yeah.
Boise State. We're in the apple orchards, and Mike Leach. I see I don't see Boise State competing here. I think this is a win for Washington State. Six games in week 2 that we had to talk about. Carla,
And no cupcakes.
and no cupcakes yet. I'm sure we'll get to a cupcake week at some point here. But Carla, I hope you enjoy everything as much as I'm going to enjoy my game.
I'll look for you in the crowd on Saturday night.
Please
I'm
do.
sure you'll be the one wearing red.
I'm going to be wearing red, yelling. I'll do something. I don't know what it's going to be.
You scratch your ear.
Yeah, okay. It'll be something like that. Guys, thank you for joining us for week 2. I hope you enjoy the games as well, and I hope you come back and join us again for week 3. Carla, thank you. Cheers.
Thanks as always. Cheers.
Thank you, guys. We'll talk to you again soon.